I enjoy the process of reminiscing. I create tier lists, spreadsheets, topsters, and brackets, which all act as an enjoyable method of cataloging and assessing everything I consume. With my overindulgence in these pastimes, I thought it could be fun to share some of my thoughts on a few of my favorite games from this past year. 2023 was possibly the best year for gaming in recent memory, and rather comically, I haven't played a single game which came out this year. All the games which I decided to complete were from my backlog. There were many games released this year which I may still want to play, and I may talk about Zelda or Baldur's Gate next year if I'm still making these. But to be honest, I quite enjoyed chipping away at my backlog, and there are a few games which I found worthy of discussion. Just to establish some semblance of a criteria, I will only be discussing games which I've completed or spent a significant amount of time playing this year. I feel like it would be disingenuous of me to praise a title which I haven't seen to its conclusion. And there are a few narrative games which I started but unfortunately haven't had time to complete this year. Of course, a more open experience may not have a conclusion, so if I feel like I have a complete understanding of a game, it will make the cut. Just as a side note, any title I've discussed in a previous video will not be included on this list. It just doesn't seem like a good use of my time, and you can watch those videos if you want to. Capiche? Faster Than Light seemed like a game I was destined to hate. I always thought that roguelikes were just not for me, which is still somewhat true, but there was something about this one that just captured me. The combat systems were cool, and the ship mechanics and side quests were quite deep, albeit not the main reason why I loved this title. FTL stands out due to its more immersive aspects. It's fun to roleplay as a captain of your small crew, and the game's casual nature makes it a very welcoming title to pick up and play. It also helps that this game has a great light-hearted and ethereal soundtrack which fosters this home away from home feeling from within me. It's extremely unique, and it got me to open up a bit to a whole genre of games. Without FTL, I wouldn't have played Dead Cells or Enter the Breach this year, both of which being great games I intend to get even more familiar with in the coming months. Even though I still wouldn't put FTL as my game of the year, it will most likely prove to be one of the most influential titles for me on this list. I can now picture myself enjoying games such as Hades or Risk of Rain 2 because of my time with it. It was surprisingly also the title I created this channel for, as I originally planned on posting some clips from it earlier this year. I played around 30 hours of this game, and while I don't intend on heading back to it immediately, I am sure I will revisit this game in the years to come. This one will just get a quick mention as I don't have too much to say about it. Rollerdrome is just great, and in my mind it's absolutely one of the best games I played this year. Every part of this game is just begging for you to optimize and master it, leading you to replay older missions with the intent of achieving higher and higher scores. It's incredibly satisfying to play this game, and its concept is just fun. How could you go wrong with corporatized Hunger Games on rollerblades? I've stated this previously, but I'm a massive fan of Resident Evil. I won't divulge too much information on the series as that could be a whole video on its own, but Resident Evil 8 totally lived up to my expectations. I really liked the fourth title, and Village did a great job at recapturing the combat and tone from it. The world is unlike anything I've seen before. It's so densely packed with content, making it feel much larger than it actually is, especially in its opening hours. It has some of the best bosses in the series, and the upgrade paths as well as the currency shop make it one of the most replayable Resident Evil titles to date. It's not all great though, as there are definitely some discussions which should be had about the lack of horror in this game and the somewhat mediocre narrative that this entry has. The latter half of the game struggles to find its footing at times, and the main character can be obnoxiously stupid. These negative factors hold it back a little bit for me, leading to it not passing some of its predecessors in my mind. But it's still an excellent game, and it still leaves me incredibly excited to try the remake of 4 and optimistic for the future of the series. I can acknowledge that The Forgotten City is a flawed game. Animations are stiff, combat is lackluster, and I would have liked a little bit more variation in its gameplay. However, what is here is undeniably very high quality, especially for its budget. It does the time loop mechanic well, and the puzzles, along with the overall mystery, left me intrigued throughout the experience. The ending was satisfying, and I also really enjoyed how the story unraveled. The idea of one person's sin destroying a civilization and restarting the loop is an extremely powerful motivator, and to put it as simply as possible, I was engrossed from start to finish. The real reason why I have this game on my list, though, is due to me just being a massive sucker for this type of game. Outer Wilds changed me, and this did find a way to almost scratch that same itch, which is a massive feat in its own right. If you're down with some jank and enjoy a good time loop, then you can't really go wrong with this game. While it may not be a title I come back to in the future, I definitely appreciated my time with the Forgotten City. Okay, so, while I still greatly enjoyed every other game on this list, I found that there were only 3 which define themselves as all-time classics I will undoubtedly look back to for the foreseeable future. Little Nightmares 2 is one of those games. Its message is poignant, yet somewhat esoteric. Its gameplay and set pieces surpass all of its contemporaries, and its visuals as well as its art design are borderline perfect. There are very few studios which can make a game which rival the likes of Inside or Limbo, but if you ask me, Tarsier made a game which is better than both of them. Every second of this game just feels so intentional. There was never a lull, and I was engrossed from start to finish. I found the ending to be superb, and I'm somewhat devastated that this game had no expansions where the first one did. Another follow-up was revealed last August, and even though it isn't being developed by the same studio, I am happy that the franchise can continue to exist even without Tarsier being at the helm. If this game even looks mildly interesting to you, you owe it to yourself to give it a shot. Okay, so this one kind of feels like cheating, but this year I got into the Total War series. These games are ones which I had absolutely no business playing. I didn't have any knowledge of tactics or any desire to even utilize them while playing these games. However, I did have the interest in learning more about Warhammer, so I bit the bullet and purchased the trilogy, and a couple of the historical titles. Total War has absolutely cannibalized the time I have been able to spend on games since I started playing them. I've dumped dozens of hours into this series in the past few months alone, and each game I play is more staggering than the last. I started with the Warhammer series, and damn, if these are not the largest games I've ever played. Immortal Empires is one of the most overwhelming gaming experiences I've had to date, and trust me, this is absolutely a compliment. I was able to learn more about macro strategies with the help of the auto-resolve button, in my commitment to trial, and mostly air. Once I got this side of the series down, I was finally able to get into the meat and potatoes, which are the battles. And these are fantastic. I thought that the tactics side of this game would be what I would try to avoid, but it turned out to be the part I'd stick around for. I got lost within the Warhammer games, and then I took a dive into Shogun 2, which I still feel like I'm hardly scratching the surface of after over 20 hours. Total War as a series somehow feels like this super niche PC game which has nefariously attained a multi-million-dollar budget. To be honest, this could almost be considered as true, as Creative Assembly has committed to price gouging their audience at every single turn. This is the only true detractor to playing these games, as you will find yourself paying for things like blood or pre-ordering troop types before the game even comes out. They are also a serial offender for price hikes, or abandoning projects they don't deem as successful. It's impossible to talk about this series without acknowledging the developer's shady behavior. And I wish this wasn't the case, but Total War still gets a spot in the best games I played this year, and possibly ever. And if I had to choose one in particular, I'd probably say it's Warhammer 3. There's only one game which I would argue left a very profound impact on me. If Faster Than Light encouraged me to open my YouTube channel, then Pentiment is the game which made me start writing scripts. I wrote and rewrote one script over and over again last spring. Each one slightly better than the last, but altogether, it was still not to a level where I was able to communicate this game's meaning to me. Eventually, I just gave up, and resigned to the fact that writing a good script for this game could just not be done. To be honest, I still kind of think this way, as it's almost impossible to write for something which I enjoy to this degree. Pentiment is a love letter to point-and-click adventure games in its traversal and interaction mechanics, while also borrowing the incredible writing and meaningful decisions from Obsidian's previous games. They made Fallout New Vegas, Pillars of Eternity, and The Outer Worlds, all of which giving Obsidian the pedigree and toolset to create this phenomenal game. Pentiment gives the player an extremely real picture of a somewhat obscure and less talked about segment of history, at least to me. I had never thought about the going-ons of small village abbeys within the Holy Roman Empire, but it does a great job at depicting the corruption and brutality of living in this time period. Every time you make a decision, it irreparably changes the town you occupy. And throughout all of the dream sequences, crimes, and mischief you play a role in, all you can do is just wonder how things could have gone so wrong. This was my favorite game of the year, and to be quite honest, I still plan on finishing that original script, and eventually publishing that video. I can't do this game justice in a year-end list. So if you eventually want to see a full breakdown of Pentiment, well, I guess consider subscribing. Until then, this has been my Game of the Year list. I hope you have all enjoyed watching this video, as it cannot be overstated how much I enjoyed talking about these games. There is definitely something very therapeutic about venting my thoughts in video format. If there's any main takeaway from this video, it's that you should never postpone chipping away at your backlog, even in the face of what some would argue is the best year gaming has had to date. Also, it would be to play Pentiment, but to each their own. Thank you for watching, and I hope I see you again later.